glad to be back here. We stayed last night up the street in the Omni, where I stayed in January of 1993 when Hillary and I and Alan Tippergore were on our bus trip on the way to the inauguration. It is wonderful to be back here. Mr. Mayor, thank you for welcoming us here, and Senator Deeds, it's great to see you again. I thank Ralph Northam for running for Lieutenant Governor. I actually saw one of his ads, and he was wearing his doctor's frock, taking care of people, and I thought, you know, if the current Republican nominee for governor proposed that we practice medicine the way he proposed we practice politics, that is, by ideology alone, don't bother me with the facts, I got my mind made up, Virginia would be a much more dangerous place to get sick in. And so I'm glad we have a doctor who wants to practice politics and medicine based on the evidence. Congressman Perriello, thank you for being here, and David Toscano, I hope you do get some more Democrats to be in your caucus. I think you will. And Shardell Herring, thank you for leading the Democratic Party and for your work in the Assembly. I thought Jessica Gebhardt did a very good job representing UVA in her remarks today, and I was thrilled finally that I got to shake hands with Professor Mann again today. I've been using him on this little campaign track Terry and I have been on. It's not a good idea to sue people who are just trying to find out what's going on. Now we're laughing, but I want you to know I'm here basically for three reasons. First of all, I love Terry McAuliffe and his wife and their 5 kids. And they've been great friends to Hillary and to Chelsea and me for a very long time. I had the honor of participating in his father's funeral in the cathedral in Syracuse, New York. I know his feisty 91-year-old mother. I'm glad that his brothers have been taking rotating duty so that one of them is always here looking over his shoulder. His big brother, literally, John, is here today. I know him. And here's what I think. I think after he has been your governor for a year, half the people who voted against him will wonder what they were thinking. I'm here for that. I'm here because with all this fighting going on in Washington, every state in our country needs leadership that is innovative, creative, cooperative, and can figure out how to get things done. And basically, in an economically challenging time, the things governors can do are, number one, create the conditions in which growth can occur. That's why if you got one candidate who supported that transportation plan and another one who was against it, this is not rocket science. To educate and train people as well as possible from cradle through adulthood for lifetime learning. And to basically imagine a new economy based on increasing unity between the college and university networks, the technology assets, and the people who can be induced to come here to create jobs or expand employment. And if you're good at it, it does make a difference. It really, really makes a difference. He'll be good at it. And the third reason is what really brought all of you here today, or a lot of you. And that is that this race has become an example, almost a metaphor for the struggle now taking place in Washington, D.C. that led to the shutdown and the threatening of our creditworthiness, and the struggle going on in places all over America. And believe it or not, as I spend most of my time, you know, with my foundation now, struggles going on all over the world. Virginia guaranteed itself a fair amount of good promotional publicity by setting the governor's race to occur in the year after the presidential race. Only New Jersey does it, so the two of you will get a lot of play on election eve. Now, here, you get even more play because you have two very interesting candidates that are wildly different. And that's an understatement. But the struggle that is playing out here is a struggle about how to respond to a very challenging time all over the world. There are all these great things going on. You're Exhibit A of that, right? Show up here, you get a good education, and learn all kinds of things. And heck, an 8-year-old child can get on the internet and find out in 30 seconds things that I had to go to university to learn. That's the good news, right? Bad news is that you can also get on the internet and learn how to make a roadside poem. Climate change is already beginning to stick its thorny claws into the rhythms of life in villages in Alaska and other places up north where the permafrost is melting and they're sinking into the mud. Some of the poorest places in the world, ironically, are going to be the first hit by their inability to grow food and deal with other problems. The depletion of local resources is really troubling. The Yellow River in China is dry at certain parts of the year, and they have chosen, because we always fall back into stress on what we're good at, the Chinese have chosen an engineering solution to try to connect the Yangtze and the Yellow by running 2 gravity-driven canals. And a lot of engineers, not even climate scientists, think that both rivers may dry up at parts of the year, and if it does, the consequences will be unpredictable but quite calamitous. We're dealing with all this stuff. Meanwhile, there is a global shortage of jobs for young people, aggravated in America and some other developed countries by the fact that after the financial crash, a lot of middle-aged people who still need to work another 15 or 20 years either lost their jobs and couldn't find another one, or found one that didn't pay what they used to make. And the accumulated impact of that is that median family income, the one in the middle after adjustment for inflation, is lower than it was the day I left office. And that was a long time ago. All of the undergraduates here were in elementary school, if that. So the real question is, how are we going to make the most of these vast opportunities that you have and deal with these challenges? And what's the best way to do it? And in this governor's race, you see the kinds of alternatives that I see all over the world. You've got, on the one hand, Terry McAuliffe, who says, these are complicated problems with a lot of moving parts. We need to get everybody together. And for a lot of these challenges, there's not a clearly partisan resolution. We need people who know different things, have different sets of experiences, and let's get together and make the best decision we can and go forward together. I want a future of shared prosperity, shared opportunities, shared responsibilities, and I like Virginia's new diversity. I want us to have a shared sense of a common community and a common destiny. Then, on the other hand, you've got his opponent who basically says, you know, all this happened because of the evils of our government. Somebody should ask him here in Virginia, where a lot of the people who started that government were, how we got through over 2 centuries as the longest lasting democracy in human history and still have the biggest economy in the world if the government always really would mess up a 2-car parade. But anyway, that's the theory of the case, right? This is all the government's fault, them. There's always an us and them. And if only they had the right ideology, they would know the truth before they look for it. And we know what it is, and we intend to impose it. Now, that's what was done to Dr. Mann. He's looking for something that ain't there. Don't bother me with the fact that more than 95% of the climate scientists with more than 95% conviction believe that climate is changing at an unsustainable rate because of human behavior. They're just wrong. How do you know? Because I decided. And the people who controlled yesterday's energy economy are happy I decided that way. But their money had nothing to do with it. I just decided. So conflict is important. And I want every rural Virginian to believe that all those pointy-headed professors at the University of Virginia are there trying to rob them of their future and suck them dry with all their tax dollars and do crazy things. How do you know? Well, I just know. It's us and them, folks. Those people up there in Charlottesville, it's us and them. Now, we're all laughing, but I'm telling you, I spent a lifetime dealing with this. This is just an old fight in a new set of clothes. But we don't live in the old times. So the consequences of the old fight and the new set of clothes are very different and greater than they used to be. The purists who oppose Terry in this race, they have sneeringly at times referred to him as a deal maker. After what we just went through with the government shutdown and the threat not to pay our debt, send me one. The Constitution to life for Virginians. You ought to go back and read it if you haven't lately. They were really worried about abuses of power and people who knew everything before they looked. And so they were most concerned to limit the power of government to abuse our liberties without making it so weak that it couldn't meet the needs of each of the time, and without making it so rigid that it couldn't evolve to meet the needs of some new time long after the framers had passed from the scenes. In order to get both limited power and the adequate power of government to do what government can do, in order to get both protections and flexibility to grow, they basically knew that each new age would have to have people who, like them, were products of the age of reason. They believed that evidence counts. They believed they always had something to learn. They believed that they had to be able to listen to people who disagreed with them and then forge a decision. In other words, the Constitution might well have been subtitled, The Art of the Deal. So you are being given an opportunity in Virginia to say to America and to your fellow Virginians, whether they vote with you or not, we have to face the future with open hands, not clenched fists. We have to face the future with an open mind and with an open heart. And nobody's got all the answers. But we can't keep going where the negative forces of our interdependence keep swallowing up the positive ones. We can't keep going where people show up for work and their income goes down every year. The thing that makes me really mad about this Medicaid expansion deal, it's not welfare folks. It is not. The people who Terry's opponent refers to as being on welfare, they already have Medicaid. This is a program to make available insurance for people who are working and still only making 100 to 133% of the federal poverty level. I think those are among the most noble people in America. They show up, they go to work, what Terry said is absolutely true. His opponent wants to fingerprint them if they show up at the emergency room and they can't pay. Look, the whole purpose of giving them insurance, besides doing the right thing by them and their families, is to make sure that the hospitals can get reimbursed. So what's going to happen is the hospitals will take care of them anyway. They won't get reimbursed. The uncompensated care bill will go up. Then they'll pass the cost along to all the rest of you, and your health insurance will go up. Now, but you'll always be able to say you didn't take that dirty money from the national government. Don't bother me about the facts. I got my mind made up. I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but you have to understand, I'm not running for anything. I do my work in my foundation. This is the fight going on all over the world between people that want to share the future and people that want to own it. Between people who have already got the truth and people who want to look for it. Between people who believe our diversity is a strength and people who just want to be around people they agree with. And I am telling you that this is a fight of the mind and the heart. All the other struggles of the 21st century to build the positive and reduce the negative forces of our interdependence, they can all be won. And this can be the most prosperous, peaceful time in human history if you win the battle of the mind and the heart. And because of the choice you face between this good person who has, it's funny, even the people who criticized him before have to admit that he has not only reached out to Republicans, he has taken more positions on more issues to certify his Democratic roots than any candidate we've had in a very long time. So he has done the right thing. He has said, this is what I think, now let's work together and build a new future. Why am I saying this since you already agree? Because political ideology and extremism has one surpassing virtue. If you can get enough people torn up and upset and look at you and they stare at you the way a lot of them do, like you're some sort of alien species. You've been there, haven't you? And they get to folks that listen to their news programs and they're so angry that steam's coming out of their ears. When steam's coming out of your ears, light bulbs can't come on in your brain. And look, these are good people bedeviled by the modern world who have been led to believe that There's nothing they have to do to work on changes. They just have to finger somebody else as the cause of all these problems they're facing. They are your neighbors and your friends. And as soon as this election's over, you need to go after them. In a nice, I don't mean go after them, I mean go after them to talk, to work together, to listen to what they're going through, listen to the way they see the world, listen to the way they have experienced this economy. Many of them are worse off than you are. But that's what this is about. We have to share the future. The question is, what are the terms on which we will share it? Virginia is being given a chance here in a laboratory because of the differences to make a statement about a future of shared prosperity, shared opportunities, and shared responsibilities. About embracing our diversity, but elevating our common humanity. That's what this whole deal is about. And the reason this is important is they will vote, every one of them, the people who disagree with you. In 2008 and 2012, 72% of registered Virginia voters voted. In 2009, you know what the number was? 40. So a full third of the total electorate and over 40% of the voting electorate went away. And this fine man paid for it. And that's what this deal is. That's why we're all handing out these little cards. You can laugh at it, but this campaign's volunteers have knocked on 1.6 million doors. You got a chance to go over. And no matter what wonders are worked in the laboratories, figuring out how to have an economically sustainable, less carbon-dependent economy, to fight climate change and create new jobs. No matter that the particle physicists have found the Higgs boson, the subatomic element that causes matter to cohere. No matter that the astrophysicists have identified 20 planets outside the solar system that seem to be dense enough and far enough away from their suns that they're enough like Earth that maybe we're not alone in the universe after all. All this is perfectly fine. But if you don't show up and have your opinion counted, then the people who think Professor Mann shouldn't be looking will prevail. That's what this is about. And this is a fair fight. Now, we clapped on the Voting Rights Act. The students here ought to be for Terry McAuliffe for another reason. Where we didn't prevail in Texas and North Carolina, look what they did. Not only photo IDs that have to be issued for the state in Texas, they do have two exceptions to their hard and fast requirement that you've got to have a state-issued photo ID. If you have a state-issued photo ID from a state university, it doesn't count. And if you have a concealed carry permit, you don't need a photo ID. No, I cannot, I'm not making this up. You can conceive of Terry's opponent doing this, can't you? In your neighboring North Carolina, home of a great network of higher education, they have a state income tax. You can deduct your children as a deduction, right, for the child tax deduction, unless your child is a student in a North Carolina institution of higher education who insists on voting where he or she is going to school. In other words, if you vote in a college town, your parents lose you as a deduction. You got to come home, even if it's 500 miles away. I couldn't make this up. And counterparts to Terry's opponents say, you know, got to worry about voter fraud. It's not about voter fraud. One guy in Texas says, look, we are neither racially prejudiced nor prejudiced against young people. We're prejudiced against people that don't vote for us. And we're going to try to make it harder for them to vote. If they voted for us, we wouldn't care. We can't live that way. Virginia has so many assets for the kind of future you want. Now you got to give your state the kind of leadership it requires. And you have to show up. That's why we're doing all these rallies. You just remember that. When you go to bed at night, you don't have to remember anything else I said. Remember, 72 and 40. And how close can you push 40 towards 72? Every rock you push up, every hill, ensures that you get the kind of future that you need and deserve. Thank you, and God bless you.